Yes, my name's Jennifer Bridges. I'm still a nurse, but I was fired from Houston Methodist. I'm the one you might have seen all over the news. We were the first one mandated with the COVID shot. So I blew it up on the national media. We have a huge state and federal lawsuit because we didn't want to be guinea pigs. We saw for ourselves in the hospital people coming in with adverse reactions after getting the Pfizer shot. And the crazy thing is let me tell you a couple things about Methodist Hospital down in Houston, Texas. When they first started with COVID, I did that COVID unit on and off the whole time till they fired me in June, right? They started the first 2 months with hydroxychloroquine. They actually used it in the hospital. Then they cut it back real quick, switched it to remdesivir and all these other expensive drugs. And we're like, why? And we would ask these doctors, no one could give us a reason. They just said, well, the hospital policy changed, but they didn't know why. And you know, most of those doctors in that hospital would not even go in those COVID rooms. There was maybe 2 that would. They would stand outside, make us dress up head to toe, and go in with an iPad. So the only form of communication those doctors would have at Houston Methodist with the COVID patients was through an iPad. So literally we'd go in there, they'd be talking to them, never assess the lungs, never look at them, nothing, go to discharge them. I would come back out and be like, no, have you listened to them? They can't breathe. Like the wheezing's horrible. They had no clue. They weren't even looking at that. And to address sorry, I'm like, I got a little emotional back here. I've been there, I've done the whole shebang, right? Even I was the first one at Methodist that they asked to do window visits because when these COVID patients were dying, and they never did this with anybody else dying, family was not allowed to come in to say goodbye. They couldn't hold their hand. They were left alone in these rooms. I was asked, because I was one of the most compassionate nurses they had there, will you do these window visits? They would escort family into the cafeteria windows. I would go there sweating my butt off for almost an hour and a half, 2 hours, just to put the phone by that loved one's ear so they could say goodbye. I would stay in there as long as I could. And other nurses, they wouldn't want to do it. They'd be like, no, it gets too hot, or I don't have time for that. And the things you would hear were just insane to me. And I'm like, I don't care about, what's going on with me. This is way more important. And I would stay in there with them, listening, to these families say goodbye. They'd even be on the window with another cell phone and go like this so they could say goodbye. And I'll love to talk to you later. I have so much information for you. But I have, right before I got fired, and I tried the right way. I didn't go to the media at first. I actually had a meeting with my CEO and CNO at Methodist in Baytown, David Bernard and Becky Chalupa. They caught me going around with my little petition to say, if people agreed with our stance, not to force us against our will. Somebody told them I was doing that. They called me into this meeting where they sat me down, they threatened me, they told me I had to stop. They could fire me over this because I was soliciting. And I told them, I said, well, what if I went to other hospitals? What do you think they would say? He looked me in the face and he said, I strongly advise you against that. And he even told me 100% compliance was more important than my individual autonomy as a nurse. And that is a huge, huge slap in the face. And then after I got so public, basically other doctors, whistleblowers were coming to me to share information. So I've seen text messages, I've seen emails where Methodist Hospital threatened their doctors. You cannot sign medical exemptions, you cannot talk about, you cannot report adverse reactions to these vaccines. And then if you do, and if somebody was actually brave enough to do that on writing, there were other people higher up to erase those. Those were not to be allowed on record. I have the proof, and I have the people that have shown me these things.
By the way, I can confirm everything you're telling me. I've heard countless times from other nurses. And I just want anybody listening, our healthcare system suffers because you're not in it anymore. And hundreds of people like you are no longer in it because they were fired by these vaccine mandates.